The story begins in a world far beyond the imagination of ordinary people like us. In this world, humans lived alongside terrifying and savage beasts, creatures so dangerous that surviving among them seemed impossible. At the center of a vast desert stood a mysterious tower, constantly surrounded by dark clouds and crackling lightning. Soon, we see a man named Admiral traveling across the desert in his ship, heading straight toward that tower. Suddenly, a monstrous creature called Diablo launched a deadly attack on them. With its massive body, it tried to overturn the ship. Admiral quickly maneuvered to steer away, and his tactic worked. However, in the chaos, while trying to prevent the handler from falling, a young boy named Hunter slipped out of the ship and was left behind in the desert. Meanwhile, on Earth, Captain Natalie Artemis and her security team were on a mission. They had come to search for another military unit that had gone missing. Their only clue was the team's last SOS message. Along the way, they discovered tire tracks that suddenly stopped, as if the vehicle had vanished into thin air. Nearby were strange stones carved with mysterious symbols. Suddenly, they saw a massive storm approaching at high speed. The team rushed into their vehicles to escape, but lightning from the storm struck the strange stones, causing them to glow. The storm grew so powerful that it overtook them and forced them into a portal. Their vehicles were violently tossed around in the whirlwind before crashing back onto the ground. When they stepped outside, the storm had disappeared and was now hovering over distant mountains that didn't even exist on their maps. They noticed massive sand dunes nearby, even though their maps showed the dunes should have been 20 kilometers away. To make matters worse, all their electronic devices had stopped working. Using the sun to determine direction, they decided to head back. That's when one of them spotted something. It was the missing team's vehicles. Burned bodies lay nearby, along with shattered glass and empty bullet shells, indicating that the soldiers had tried to defend themselves. Strangely, there were no footprints in the sand. Whoever, or whatever, had attacked them left no trace. Unbeknownst to them, Hunter was watching everything through binoculars. Soon, the team stopped again, stunned by an enormous skeleton in front of them, far larger than any dinosaur they had ever seen. Suddenly, Hunter shot an arrow toward them. The soldiers opened heavy fire in his direction, but Captain Artemis caught the arrow and ordered everyone to stop. The arrow was made of chalk. It was a warning signal that danger was near. At that very moment, Diablo burst out of the sand. The team scrambled into their vehicles and attacked with every weapon they had, but nothing seemed to harm the beast. Diablo rammed one vehicle, flipping it over several times and killing X instantly. Another soldier, Steeler, barely escaped into a second vehicle, but Diablo overturned that one too and snatched him up in its jaws. Before dying, Steeler threw multiple grenades at the monster. Though they didn't seriously injure it, the explosions gave the remaining soldiers time to hide among the rocks. Hunter tried to distract Diablo with another arrow while the soldiers took shelter inside a cave. The cave was too small for Diablo to enter, so it eventually retreated. Inside, Dash was panicking, but Captain Artemis stepped up as a leader and ordered everyone to stay focused. They would survive and return home. Suddenly, a spider-like creature named Nerscylla attacked and grabbed Artemis in its claws. It bit her, injecting venom into her body, then threw her down and fled. The soldiers fired at it while Marshall and Lincoln tried to revive Artemis with CPR, but there was no response. Believing she was dead, Dash urged everyone to run as night was falling and more Nerscylla creatures were approaching. From a distant mountain peak, Hunter attempted to fight them off with arrows but had to retreat when one attacked him. During the escape, Dash tripped and fell, forcing the others to stop. Seizing the opportunity, a creature snatched Marshall and carried him away. Meanwhile, Artemis suddenly regained consciousness and heard her teammates screaming. But before she could react, another Nerscylla attacked and knocked her unconscious again. When she finally awoke, she found herself trapped inside a cocoon in a Nerscylla nest. Struggling through the pain, she broke free and saw piles of bones scattered around. Marshall and Dash were also trapped inside cocoons nearby. Fighting through the agony, Artemis reached toward Marshall's fallen. She picked up Marshall's bag and found a flashlight, an oxygen canister, and a few bullets inside. Turning on the flashlight, she carefully moved forward through the web-filled tunnels. She freed Lincoln and told him that her chest was hurting badly. Supporting Lincoln on her shoulder, Artemis began leading him toward the exit. Suddenly, her flashlight died. At that exact moment, a Nerscylla appeared in front of them. Artemis quickly lit a torch using fire and tried to scare it away. Meanwhile, Lincoln's pain intensified. When he tore open his shirt, he saw that eggs were growing inside his wound. Just then, another Nerscylla lunged at them. As it moved toward Artemis, she sprayed oxygen onto the flames, igniting the entire nest in a massive fire. She crawled desperately toward the exit, but at the last second, a Nerscylla grabbed her leg and pulled her back. Artemis threw bullets into the flames. As soon as they caught fire, they exploded. Finally, she managed to escape the nest safely. Morning had arrived, and the sunlight prevented the Nerscylla from chasing her. However, she still felt as if thousands of insects were crawling over her body. In panic, she began scratching herself frantically. Then she found a bullet on the ground. She opened it, poured the gunpowder onto the wound on her leg, and struck two stones together to create a spark. The gunpowder ignited, cauterizing and sealing her wound. Afterward, she climbed a hill to survey the area. All she could see was endless desert and the black storm swirling in the distance. Perhaps that storm was her only way back home. But before heading toward it, she decided to make sure the path was clear. She picked up a stone and threw it into the sand. Immediately, Diablo awoke with a thunderous roar. When it couldn't spot Artemis, it retreated back beneath the sand. Meanwhile, Artemis wandered through a rocky area, unaware that Hunter was secretly following her from a distance. After some time, she found a wrecked ship and hoped to find water there, but the container was filled only with sand. As she explored further, Hunter suddenly jumped from behind and held a knife to her throat. But Artemis was no amateur. She fought back fiercely, and soon the two were engaged in an intense hand-to-hand fight. Neither was weaker than the other. At one point, Artemis stabbed Hunter in the shoulder with his own knife, yet he still overpowered her and won the fight. He tied her hands and took her toward his hidden cave. He urged her to walk faster because once night fell, the Nerscylla would attack again. Artemis stumbled and fell, but cleverly picked up a shard of glass from the ground. When they reached Hunter's cave, he drank water and ate moss growing on the rocks, but gave her nothing. When she tried to speak, he silenced her because Nerscylla were lurking outside. Later, Hunter prepared a special herbal paste and applied it to his shoulder wound. Then he prayed before two small statues. Pretending to sleep, Artemis secretly used the glass shard to cut the ropes binding her hands. The next morning, Hunter stepped outside to check the surroundings. When he returned, Artemis was gone. Suddenly, she attacked him from behind and tied him up. She began drinking water from his bowl, but Hunter knocked it over with his foot so she couldn't drink. Since they didn't understand each other's language, arguing was pointless. In anger, Artemis smashed the statues. Enraged, Hunter lunged at her, and a fierce fight broke out again. They struggled out of the cave. Suddenly, Hunter slipped and rolled down into an Nerscylla nest. At the last moment, Artemis grabbed his hand and saved him. She pulled him up and cut his ropes to show that she was not his enemy. Then she offered him a piece of chocolate. After tasting it, Hunter seemed genuinely pleased. Later, he shared some drinking water from his pouch with her. Together, they reached the edge of a mountainous region. Through gestures, they managed to understand that they had to reach the storm at any cost. But on the way, they would have to face Diablo. Artemis suggested returning to the military site to retrieve weapons, but Hunter somehow made her understand that guns were useless against these monsters. Instead, he proposed killing an Nerscylla and collecting its venom to defeat Diablo. Artemis agreed to the plan and even volunteered to act as bait so Hunter could extract the venom. As the sun set, she went into the rocky area and began singing to attract a Nerscylla. Their plan worked. When one approached, Artemis ran toward the trap they had set. The creature's leg got caught in a rope, and Hunter leapt down from above, splitting its head in two with his massive sword. They cut off its stinger and fled before more Nerscylla could arrive. Back in the cave, Hunter revealed that the statues Artemis had broken belonged to his deceased parents. The next day, they prepared for their final plan. They attached the Nerscylla's stinger to the tip of an arrow and set a trap inside the wrecked ship. Hunter gave Artemis some weapons, including a powerful grappling hook and two special blades. To lure Diablo, they threw a wooden container into the desert. Furious, Diablo awoke from its slumber. Artemis and Hunter grabbed their weapons and ran. As Diablo began chasing them at terrifying speed, Diablo's suddenly disappeared beneath the sand, forcing both of them to stop. Artemis decided to present herself as bait in front of Diablo's, while Hunter ran to grab his weapons. As he ran, the small statues of his parents fell to the ground. The moment he paused to pick them up, Diablo's burst out of the sand and attacked him. Without wasting a second, Hunter fired the poisoned arrow, which struck straight into Diablo's eye. Enraged, the beast charged at Hunter to finish him off, but Artemis distracted it by firing her machine gun from behind. The venom had begun to blur Diablo's vision, yet the bullets still had little effect. It charged forward and hurled Artemis' vehicle far into the air. She barely managed to crawl out before Diablo's came after her again. Seizing the opportunity, Hunter leapt onto Diablo's head and drove his sword deep into its skull. Unfortunately, it wasn't deep enough. Diablo's shook violently and flung Hunter onto a nearby vehicle. Still, Artemis refused to give up. She lodged her grappling hook into Diablo's head and swung herself up with the rope. With all her strength, she forced the blades deeper into its skull. At last, Diablo's collapsed and died. Hunter, however, was unconscious. Artemis gathered essential supplies from the nearby vehicles, cut a large piece of Diablo's hide, placed Hunter on it, and dragged him forward across the desert. After hours of walking, a violent sandstorm struck. Using whatever materials she had, Artemis improvised a tent. With the help of an emergency army kit, she kept Hunter's heart beating. When the storm finally passed, they found themselves buried under sand, but the tent had saved their lives. They crawled out safely and continued walking until they reached an oasis. In that area lived a massive creature called Apsaros, but Hunter explained that it was harmless and wouldn't attack them. As Artemis stepped forward to drink water, a monster named Cephalos suddenly attacked her. Hunter instantly sliced it into two pieces with a sharp sword. Later, they cooked and ate it. Night soon fell. Suddenly, the oasis burst into flames. A terrifying new creature had arrived, the largest and most dangerous monster yet. Its name was Rathalos, and like a dragon, it could breathe fire. A frightened herd of Apsaros came charging through the area, fleeing from Rathalos. Hunter managed to hide, but Artemis twisted her ankle and fell. She thought she would be crushed under the stampede. At that moment, a man appeared before her. It was the Admiral, the same man we saw at the beginning of the story. Using his flaming sword, he kept the Apsaros away from Artemis. She stood up beside him and ignited fire from her own blades as well. Meanwhile, Hunter ran toward a mountain peak, but nearly fell while escaping the herd. Just in time, the handler appeared on a rope and saved him. After the Apsaros were gone, Artemis thanked the Admiral. To her shock, he replied in English, then suddenly knocked her unconscious with a single punch. When she woke up, she found herself imprisoned inside a cage aboard a ship, with the Admiral watching her. Hunter looked heartbroken seeing her captured, but was powerless to help. After he left, Artemis noticed a lock beneath her feet. Using a bench for leverage, she broke the lock and escaped, making her way into the kitchen. As she tried to steal a knife, she was startled by the Admiral's cat-like chef, Palico, who stopped her from taking anything. Just then, Hunter arrived with good news. She was free. He took her to the Admiral, who unlocked her handcuffs and apologized for the misunderstanding. The Admiral explained that he had encountered people from Earth before and knew what they had done to their own planet. That's how he had learned the human language. He told Artemis that she was now in another world, and the reason for everything was the sky tower atop the mountain surrounded by the black storm. It must have been built by an ancient civilization far more advanced than the present one. People who could travel between worlds. But for some unknown reason, they had vanished. The Admiral suspected that Earth was somehow connected to it. Their mission now was to reach the tower. However, Rathalos stood in their way. The Admiral promised that if Artemis helped them defeat Rathalos, he would do everything possible to send her home. She agreed. The next morning, the entire team set out toward the mountain. After hours of climbing, they finally reached the sky tower, which stood above flowing lava. The Admiral believed the lava might be the source of Rathalos' power. As they advanced, they found shattered glass fragments, proof that Rathalos was nearby. The Admiral explained that just before breathing fire, Rathalos becomes weakest because all its energy is concentrated on producing flames. The team split into groups and prepared for battle. Suddenly, Rathalos unleashed a massive fire blast, burning several soldiers alive. It then blocked the path to the tower. The Admiral charged forward, followed by Artemis and Hunter with their weapons. The others tried to assist, but Rathalos hurled them aside. At that moment, mysterious symbols around the tower began glowing. The trio launched multiple attacks together, but even that wasn't enough to defeat Rathalos. Suddenly, Artemis was transported back to Earth through a portal. When she regained consciousness, an army rescue team found her. They placed her on a stretcher and flew her away in a plane. But before they could get far, they were caught in the black storm again, and Rathalos flew through the portal to Earth. It destroyed the plane and began attacking military vehicles. Continuous gunfire had no effect. With a blast of fire, it incinerated the soldiers. Artemis barely escaped the wreckage. Then she came up with a plan. She grabbed 2 flares from the plane and ran toward Rathalos, firing her grappling hook into its wing. Swinging up onto it, she slashed its wing with her knife. Furious, Rathalos prepared to breathe fire at her. At the last second, Artemis ignited one of the flares, badly burning her own hand, and thrust it forward. Even that wasn't enough to kill the monster. Just as Rathalos was about to finish her, Hunter arrived through the portal and fired a barrage of arrows. One arrow pierced through an open wound and entered Rathalos' body, triggering a massive internal explosion. The beast finally turned to ash. Hunter told Artemis they had come to Earth because they couldn't allow Rathalos to destroy her world. Meanwhile, another portal opened above the sky tower, and a new monster named Gormagala appeared. Artemis decided to return to the other world with the Admiral and Hunter to destroy the tower once and for all and end this cycle of monsters forever. Together, Artemis, Hunter, and the Admiral attacked the creature and forced it back through the portal. Then they followed it into that world to finish the fight. In the final scene, a mysterious man is seen watching everything from the top of the tower. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like it and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.